Hi. Someone asked on the Facebook page to do some Alias stuff. So, I've just got myself a trial version of Alias Surface and just thought I'd go over some stuff. Actually, this is a model I've done a while ago, as you probably all know where it's from. And I'm just going to show you basics to build on a certain section of this car, for example. So what I'll probably cover most is I'll probably go over this wheel arch here, and by going over this wheel arch I'll be able to show you a fair whack of what you need to know. But first, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put the model on and get my object lister out. First things first, I'll go over generally the UI. This is called the object lister. Now you can have the layers bar, which goes across the top here, which is this bar, but I prefer not to use that. I prefer, if you go down to Window, Object Lister, and then it'll appear embedded, as this is currently, but it normally asks you, if you go Window and click on the little box, you can have it embedded or not embedded. So you select that update, so it's like in a little floating window, which I prefer. Oh God, what's going on here? I prefer it like that, in a little window like that. Anyway, generally this is all your tools in the palette, which is also accessible from here. But I tend to use shelves normally, but that's an altogether a different thing, going through how to do shelves and set shelves up, because I tend to have all my most used tools in there rather than having to pick through every single thing on here. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'll just show you actually what I'll do. I'm just gonna, most stuff is in here, don't need that, so I'll trash that. I think just for you to have a general good understanding from the first place, I best show you this actually, because it is kind of important, and it does make your workflow better suited to whatever you want. Now, I never touch spheres, cubes or planes, never touch those. A middle mouse click and hold and then drag into the trash there. I'll never use this tool, that's a crap tool. Generally I use those. I don't use these anymore because these are crap as well. They're for like doing tubes on the edges of the surfaces, but there's a better way of doing tubes, so I wouldn't advise using those. Surface edit, I use all of these. I don't tend to use that one. I use that when I'm preparing models for rapid prototyping or milling, and I use these when I'm evaluating. I tend to not bother using mesh because I'm not a Class A modeler. So construction view, I don't need to know any of that. You can leave all this stuff up if you want, like, but for my benefit, I don't tend to. This is all about evaluating your curvature cones, and it's where you get into like Class A stuff, but I don't tend to do that. Pick, don't need to know about pick. So what I tend to have is curves, surfaces. Now, what I want, and I've got surface edit, haven't I? Delete that, don't need that there. Right, so there's my curves. Where's my align tool? Right, I need my align tool, so I need to go to Object, Edit, Align. And I'm going to drop this in. I'll drop it in here for now. But all I've done is middle mouse click and hold, and then you just drag, and it's appeared there. And you can place it anywhere based on that red arrow. Extend I use quite a bit. So you can drag and drop, and you can customize it so you can move it to the other one and it'll appear in here. So I'm going to just chuck everything into, you know, I'll start from scratch here. I'm making a right mess of this, by the way. Bear with me, because this is obviously a trial. I've not long had a new computer, so where's all the surface edit stuff? Right, project and trim. Projects I use all the time. Trim, again, use that all the time. And what have we got? Skin, square, rail, multi-surface drafts. Round, never use round. You get really bad, terrible radiuses with that. I don't know why, but everything's got a gap in between it, which is quite irritating. Just going to move these across. Middle mouse again, click and hold and drag. Just setting all this up really. I might end up breaking this into 2 tutorials because this is not going as planned. Really, I should have set this up beforehand, but it's good for you to all know anyway. I'm blabbering now. Right, so what I've got revolve tool, skin tool, square, rail, multi-surface draft, fillet, symmetry. That says symmetry, but I've got a feeling in it. That's a fillet. So I don't tend to use that one either. What I haven't got on here is freeform blend. I use that quite a bit. And tube tool I used to use quite a lot to do fillets and rads. So when I say a fillet, it's if you've not used Alias before, you might know it as a radius on a corner or in between 2 surfaces. You create a rounded edge. In Alias, it's known as a fillet, so I've always called it a fillet. I don't use the round tool because it's terrible surface quality. This tool, Profile, is from 2014 onwards, I think, and that is a brilliant tool for doing your fillets and your rads, which is under the rail tool. Click and hold. If it's got a yellow arrow, you can click and hold and you get an option of things. Never use the inside because you get a terrible surface quality. Yeah, that's the part line where you can create a shut line, which I'll show you, which is quite good. But it can be a bit hit and miss, but it depends on how well you've built your model in the first place. A line tool is critical. Use a line tool all the time. And that's because you have to get everything in curvature. So it's important that is. Oh, what is it doing now? Come on. There we go. Do it then. See, sometimes previous versions of this would be dodgy as well. You just won't do it, just to be awkward. Has it even done that? It hasn't even done that, has it? I don't know why it won't just do that. Okay, don't know what that was all about. This tool's quite good, symmetry tool. I use that for curves. Offset tool is pretty self-explanatory, that one is. anyway. And they're the kind of surface tools that I use all the time. I've got project and trim. And then in the curves is, I don't use that. I don't mess around with the blend curves because they're just too fiddly. Sections, I don't do sections. I don't do EP curves. Don't bother stretching. These are good tools for general curves. Now if I double click, oh no, that's not the right one. See, there's two circles, and I'll show you the difference between them, because building a good circle makes a massive difference to the quality of surfaces, especially around wheel arches and stuff like that. Occasionally I'll use a line tool, but the rest of them I don't really use these. So I'm just going to bin these. So I'm just going to spend a good 10 minutes just sorting out shelves. Right, good to go now. After all that, thank you for bearing with. Yeah, so if I show you the basics of, if you are new to Alias altogether, right, I don't need that, so ditch that. This is my usual setup. Now if you hold Shift and Alt, you'll get the viewing panel pop up, and that will just view everything. Now I've got a layer. Normally I assign all my curves to a layer, because as you can see you get ridiculous number of curves that build up these. So I'm just going to find those curve layers just to clear the view, because there's quite a lot going on at the minute. But it's been a while since I've had this open, so I've got another layer of curves somewhere. Right, so to go over the general use, how you use it, you have a combination of Shift and Alt or Shift and Control. And if I do Shift and Control and then left mouse brings up this first marking menu, which allows me to pick things like pick nothing, deselect anything, pick CVs, which is what your curves are made up of, pick the curve in general, pick an object, pick a surface, curve on surface, blend points if used, blend curves, edit points if used, points to edit. Middle mouse, so if I do Shift, Control and middle mouse, you get move, move pivot, scale, center pivot, rotate, non-proportional scale, query edit and delete locators. If you right click whilst holding Control and Shift, you get information window, toggle model, toggle grid, control off, plane, controls, shade, shade quality. So each mouse kind of has relative. So these are all about your view on your right mouse. Middle mouse is all about moving. Left mouse is all about picking. So I'm going to toggle the model. When you toggle model, it goes into this current view where you see just a solid model. You don't see individual surfaces. So this is where it's not in model mode, per what that says. And then to go over how you move around in the viewport, hold Shift and Alt, left mouse is tumble, where the camera just pivots and moves. Shift and Alt and middle mouse is pan, where you can pan from side to side and up and down. And then again, Shift and Alt, right click is zoom, or you can use your mouse scroll wheel. in this case I've got a Magic Mouse. But if you're using Magic Mouse on a Mac, I recommend getting this little plugin, which is called Magic Prefs, and you can customize all your buttons and do custom buttons, and I use it generally for one finger middle click, which gives you middle mouse button. I think you can get it on a standard mouse, but you never used to be able to. Yeah, see, it doesn't give you a middle mouse button. So if you go Magic Prefs, just type into Google, they've got a website, it's free to download, really good app, excellent app. So if you're using any 3D program, get Magic Prefs for your Magic Mouse. Anyway, so to deselect anything, pick nothing, and that's it. You can just literally, you just pull off, and that's fine. When you hold Shift and Alt, you'll notice this little window pops up. This is the window that I prefer to use, and you've got perspective, or if you untick that, it goes into orthographic mode, which you'll notice you don't get any kind of perspective gain on the actual viewing window, which is also known as orthographic. Click on that, then it goes into perspective. So you got vanishing, it goes into like a vanishing point. So I'm not going to explain perspective, you don't know what it means. These arrows will move you around the model. You've got the top of the car, underside of the car, front, back, each side. They all work whether you're in perspective or whether you're in orthographic. If you press this button, it will just view the whole model. Whatever view you're in, it will just scale it down to fit into the window, which is great. And the alternative to this is when you get out the box, it'll come out as general preferences. If you go to viewing, I can't use a view panel, but you can use a view cube, but I prefer to use a viewing panel. So that's generally how you do that. And to explain everything on here, for example, if I just select and then I'll toggle hide unselected, so I'm just going to hide everything apart from the body just so it runs a bit smoother. Now, what you'll notice now, there's little things popped up here where I've clicked on that surface. Now, all I've done, holding Shift and Alt, click anywhere on anything, and what that is the origin of the camera. So you'll notice the camera orbits around that point. So if I move it to over here, for example, it'll orbit over there. If I put it over to there, and it just means you can focus right in on a particular area that you're trying to work on, and then you can swing back over here maybe if you're working on something over it, and it just makes it so much easier to navigate around. Rather than having to kind of pan, move, you can literally just do that, zoom in, and you're on that area. And that is Shift, Alt, and then you just left mouse click anywhere, which is absolutely bang on. I've used a lot of programs on a daily basis at Rhino. I use Rhino at work, and it's just I compare everything to Alias because I learned Alias at uni, and Alias is the best program I've used since finishing uni. I've used SolidWorks and that's terrible. Maya is another favourite of mine, but it's for a different purpose. If you're doing industrial design of any form, I would recommend learning Alias, just because it's a far superior program for NURBS. And then just to go over how things are built up at the minute you're looking at this model, and if you've not used it before, there's just a series of random lines everywhere that make up the surface patches which make up the finished model. And the theory is you build up the car or the product out of a lot of surfaces, not one big surface sort of thing. So if I go into this random colour, each colour is a surface that has been built or modified and trimmed to whatever shape it needs to be. Each colour is a different surface which you build up out of a series of curves. So that gives you an idea as to how many surfaces you have to make individually to create this sort of form. And the idea is you want it to appear seamless. So there's no creases that you don't want. Everything seems to flow nice and naturally. Then if you go down here, tolerance window, depending on how good your computer is, turn that down to 0.0, whatever the smallest is, and change fast to accurate. And it just means it'll display the surfaces as accurately as possible, rather than having inaccurate display, just so you can see exactly what's going on. And then you can see what's going on in your actual highlights when you put it into various forms of this display. And it kind of just a way that you can check what the highlights are doing. Highlights are everything in terms of, especially automotive design. Product design, it depends on who you work for, but highlights are absolutely paramount. You have to get your highlights right and surface quality right. Zebra stripe is what we use to evaluate the flow of a surface. So you can see how these are all continuous loops, and then when I put it into toggle mode, you can see, oh, that's made out of several surfaces. So the idea is you're trying to get all your surfaces to flow nicely. There is something weird going on in here, but it was quite a difficult thing to model. But I'm not a Class A modeler, so yeah, there's probably better ways of doing. I'll just show you my workflow as a concept modeler. But so you get an idea as to how the light will fall on the surface. Then you notice your reflections. Pay attention to reflections, which is what this is all about. Zebra. It's all about evaluating reflections and how your surfaces flow. And then, before we get into anything in terms of modelling, I'll show you things like your rads and how they blend, which is quite important. So yeah, what we'll probably do now is, what else can I show you in terms of user interface? Default, you can change default to visualize, and in visualize you can then choose various materials in this top shader library. So fabrics, I'll show you metal. I'll show you paints. It seems like an interesting colour. Now what you can do, you can control and shift and left mouse. I'm going to pick surfaces, and then I'm just going to drag over all of them, and all that will do, even if there's curves in there, it will just pick just the surfaces. And then once because I double clicked on there, that will appear in here somewhere. So where is that surface gone? Then I'm just going to assign that. And then when I go to shade quality, which is shift control right mouse, that's how I've assigned a new surface. So if I select front surfaces and I use this button here, it'll assign that. So that's how you change your surfaces when you highlight something, you get this little scroll down window, which has got colour, so you can change colour, transparency if you want it to be transparent, diffuse and specular. Explaining that is a different ballgame altogether. That's how light interacts with the surface and a material. And reflectivity, how reflective you want a surface to be. So that's generally how you do surfaces. You can pick objects that are selected to a certain surface finish or whatever. So I'm just going to select those, put them back to what they were. So that is generally how you go about changing surface finishes and stuff like that. If you pick an object, it'll pick anything. So if there's a surface or a curve, it'll pick anything. Surface will only pick surfaces. Curves will only pick curves. CVs will, yeah, I'll show you that when you actually start building curves and CVs. And you can also do in here environments. So if I double click on one of these, it will change the environment that it's being used to reflect into the surfaces, etc. And some of them appear in the actual window, and then some of them clearly don't want to do it. It might be Alias Automotive and not Surface that allows you to do that, but normally they will appear in. I'm appear to have got no option. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it's not appearing. But basically, you'll notice how that affects these surfaces. So if I select that one, it will reflect wherever that HDRI is. You notice it's actually got an environment it's being reflected. So you can see what it looks like in different environments, blah blah blah. What else is there I can show you just as a general overview? I'll show you how to change the pivot actually. If I do right mouse click, grid, I can bring the grid up. And what I'll do, for the purpose of this, I'm going to select these surfaces down here, and you'll notice a little green dot appears when you select any surface or object or curve. And then what you can do is that is the pivot. So if I were to do middle mouse, Control and Alt, Shift, middle mouse, rotate, then what it'll do, it will rotate. Left mouse is in the x-axis, which is that direction, the red arrow. Middle mouse is in the y-axis, which is in the green arrow's direction. And then z-axis is the right mouse, the blue arrow. So you can rotate, and what that will do, it will just rotate around that pivot point. And what you can also do is you can move that. So if you press Shift and Control, move pivot allows you to move that pivot. Now left mouse, I can just drag it to anywhere I want. If I press and hold Alt and left click, it'll snap to a grid point. If I do Control and Alt, it'll snap to an edge or a curve. So that is snapped to there. So you can do that. Control Alt, snap it to any edge or any curve. You can snap it and hold and drag to the edge of a curve or a surface, and then you can rotate at that point. So that is how you move the pivots of any object. So that allows you to then, you can also scale from that. It will scale from the pivot point. You can do non-proportional scale. in, again, all 3 axes individually, which is obviously not always good, but yeah. So that explains the pivots. So I suppose the next thing now is literally I'll just go straight into some modelling, so I'll do that in a separate video, and I'll leave that as just a general UI. I'll show you how to do it a layer before we go actually. If you want to select a surface, if you go layer, new layer, then it'll appear at the bottom as the highest number or whatever. If you double click on that, you can, when it wants to not be able, come on, you can call it whatever you want to call it. When you've got a surface or an object or a curve, you can then right click and hold. You can assign it to that layer. You can turn the layer visibility off. So if I assign that to that layer, for example, and say if that's a surface I want to work around, but I kind of only want it to be a reference, but I want to be able to see what I'm doing with it, you can put it onto reference and it'll go brown. So you can see that, but it's not something you can pick. You can't pick it. It's just there, self-explanatory. It says reference, and you notice the layer goes brown. You can make it pickable, so it comes back. These little boxes here can turn things on and off. And if you press on the arrow, it will list everything that's assigned to that layer. And you can pick objects from that layer. You can do symmetry, where it will just, you can model on one side and it will do the symmetry on the other side for you. And you can make it inactive, so it doesn't do anything, but it's still there. So that's generally how layers work. It's kind of like Photoshop. So, you know, you use them because I can isolate all the body panels on one layer, all the glass, all the wheels on separate layers, and it just makes it easier for organising your model. So that's pretty straightforward. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I'll do another video, and I'll go over generally how to go about building this front wing. Cheers.